we chose them. We chose them because they were a little lower in price than the other Brigantines, but it's a very nice venue, and we get a patio outside, so I think it'll be real nice.
Outside on December 17th?
No, outside, inside. We have a patio that we can be inside or outside. Does anyone know does anyone know where our presenters are?
I did send them the link to the Zoom.
To this Zoom, not the last month's Zoom?
Yeah, I think I sent this one. Let me verify.
Can you contact them right out?
Hey, Rob, Christmas party.
24, yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, did we do a time for the Christmas party? Was it gonna be 1 to 5 or something like that?
4.
2 to 4?
Great. Hi, Rob Reichman. How are you? Are you having trouble logging in?
I'm sorry, say that again.
This is Rob Reichman. Okay, hold on a second. But you have the link?
Yeah, I got the link. Do I need to email to him? Did he not get it?
But can you send the link to Fred, and Fred, can you also send it to John?
Yeah, I'll send it to Fred right now.
Or vice president? Okay, I'm gonna have him send you the link right now. But, okay, thanks. We'll see. And can you forward it to John also? And we'll see you in a minute. Okay, thank you, Fred. Bye-bye.
Up there. You be the third one, right? Right. You be the third person.
But are you gonna send the link to Fred?
I just sent it. Yeah,
Okay,
I thought I'd sent it to him earlier because he asked for it. And we were asking him for a bio.
okay.
I'm not. Do we change our link every single month?
No. It was because Bob is out of town and Randy was using his. Oh, it is unique for every month. Oh,
Oh,
I
okay.
guess we do.
Yeah,
Okay.
we did. At years we gave up doing it. We just use the same link every month, and
Lou,
that way.
Lou, by the way, I have your badge.
Okay, thank you.
I'll bring it next time.
Yeah, I may be not there next time as well. I'm kind of got a bunch of travel going on, but bring
Okay.
it. We'll see.
I'll
Okay,
hang on to it.
thank you. You
I'll
probably just
bootleg-
want your money.
I'll bootleg your call on FT8.
Okay, wouldn't be the first.
Bob, thank you for that interesting addendum at the end of the newsletter on FT8. That's a topic I wouldn't touch.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I got some nice comments about it.
It's the reality of life. I mean,
It's like there's a big turnout there at the restaurant tonight.
pretty good. Yeah.
Good to see.
Everybody wants the chocolate.
Yeah, I'd rather be there.
The peanut gallery is asking where your mask is, bud.
Well, I don't need it here in my shack, so.
We want the COVID filter in the Zoom option. Right.
All right.
Oh, here's Fred. Good.
There you go.
There's one other too, also.
Hello, hello.
Loud and clear, Fred.
Okay, I'm
No video yet, though.
yeah, that we're working on that.
One step at a time.
Yeah, I never got a link,
Did I neglect to send that to you, Fred? I'm sorry.
so it appears.
I'll blame it on COVID.
Okay, let's turn on the camera. Camera. Where am I? Well, that changed something, but it didn't turn on the camera.
Sorry, Bob. Mission.
Okay, start video. I apologize, fellows, for making you wait.
Well, we're sorry you didn't get the Zoom credentials. Early, it's 6:30 here.
You stop it. No, I've started the video already. Well, let's stop the video and start it again. Start video.
Do you have a lens cover on your camera?
No, I
Okay,
just checked it.
it's awfully dark. So,
Norman, he's on the East Coast. It's dark there.
yes, that's true.
Nothing is, you know, when it goes bad, it goes bad. Let's see. There's my chroma cam. Let's see if I can start that. Preview. Background. Worked Monday. All right, let's see if there's another way to deal with this. Let's see, our Fred data. Ham radio. Ham radio. And golly. Now let's try another one.
There are two presenters.
Yes.
Are they-
One is on, the other isn't.
Oh.
Okay, here's the. It's Fred Hoppen Garden, K1VR, and John Stratton, and 5AUS.
I don't know what's going on with N5AUS, by the way. He hasn't been responding to me.
Hmm.
He could have gone to trial. He had a big case coming up.
Hmm. Should we send the border patrol to hunt him down?
And no doubt that they'd help. Let me just 23.
Missouri.
There we go. I've got the slide presentation. Now I have to start it.
He's a weekend. It's not a member of the club, yeah.
We're good.
Can you see?
Yep.
We can.
Okay, well, I'm not succeeding in getting my camera going, but I do have the presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we have the fortune of having Fred Hoppen Garden, K1VR, and he was also supposed to have John Stratton and 5AUS speaking tonight. They're both attorneys, and they're going to talk about the ARL efforts this year in Washington. So rather than without any further ado, we'll get started. The floor is yours, Fred, and you can Randy, you have him set so he can control everything. Okay, great. Okay, good. It's all yours, Fred. Thank you.
I just have one question. K9RHY. Did I help you a decade or more ago?
What was your question?
Did I work with you a decade or more ago when you
Oh,
were?
absolutely you did. And thank you very much for your help.
And did it work out to your satisfaction?
Indeed it did. So congratulations on that as well. It was a long fight and ugly, but thank you.
Oh, glad to know it worked out well. Okay, here we go. I'm Fred Hopengarten, K1VR. I've been a licensed ham, catch this, since 1956, and a licensed lawyer since 1972. So I've been a lawyer over 50 years now, and I must tell you that in the ham radio world, it doesn't get any better, or so it seems. It has gotten a lot better since 1985 with the adoption of PRB1 by the FCC, but there are some more things that we ought to be doing, and I thought I'd bring you up to date on what I'm working on as part of the Legislative Activities Committee of the ARL on behalf of the Board of Directors. I was, for a term, a director representing New England. I've slid off the board now, and I'm working entirely on these Washington efforts. So, hit page down and nothing happens. Now, what do I have to do next? Well, this is going to be the hard way. We're working on a few things for you in Washington right now. One of them is the defense of our secondary status at 3.1 to 3.45 gigahertz, where the FCC has proposed that we will lose all rights. The military has decided they want to take it over, and we've always taken the position that as long as we're not interfering, we ought to be able to have secondary status. And so far, we're not being successful in this particular effort before the FCC. With respect to the Forest Service, you may know that they want to charge all repeaters, whether commercial or amateur, that are on Forest Service land, an annual rent of $1,400. We've been in Washington arguing to senators that this will actually wind up taking down public service repeaters that can't afford $1,400 every year. The Idaho and Alaska delegations have been particularly helpful, but this was created by a Forest Service rule, and we need to develop more friends at the Forest Service. It's pretty plain. A third thing we've been working on, whoops, there we go. Now I know how to change pages. I can use the mouse wheel. Is that for a long time now, there's been a 300 baud limit on the symbol rate for digital communications. And the problem with that is it doesn't permit the higher speeds on the low frequencies for WinLink and its amateur radio use, which is the preferred by our organizations that we serve, like the Red Cross and the federal agencies. They prefer us to be using WinLink at higher speeds so we can move more data in the same amount of time. We have succeeded, I think, 5, 6, 7, 8 consecutive times in having the FCC waive the symbol rate limit in times of emergency, like the Puerto Rico hurricane and the like. And the argument we're making to the FCC is that if they're waiving it every time we need it, they should just waive it generally, because it's doing no harm. Now, we're aware that there are some within the amateur community who think that once waived, that symbol rate limit will allow digital communications to take over, for example, the entire 40-meter band. But dealing with interference is something that hams do all the time, and we don't think that's really going to happen. But for our purpose, one of the stated purposes of the amateur service is to serve emergency communications. We really need to be able to move information faster to be more useful to the served agencies. And finally, there's something that N5AUS, the director from the West Gulf Division, likes to call the PLUS Act, which is the elimination of private land use restrictions. And this bill is HR 4006. Please take out a pencil and note HR 4006. Because I'm going to explain this in great depth. I've just gone over these, so I'll go quickly through this. We're actually we've actually given the Arizona delegation language to insert into their committee report. That's Representative Lesko, whose husband, by the way, happens to be a ham. I'm not sure he's very active, but he is a ham. And we're working hard on that one. With respect to this, we may have to wind up with a congressional repeal of the Forest Service's authority to impose a fee because they're not being helpful so far. With respect to the Forest Service, Idaho Senator James Risch has been the leader. And if you're friendly with him or his campaign, remember that he does us good work. With respect to the Arizona delegation, this is Representative Debbie Lesko. And she's also, by the way, introduced a bill to make April 18th a National Day of Recognition. It is the actual day that the International Amateur Radio Union was formed, and that's why April 18th was chosen. With respect to the private land use restrictions, our principal sponsors, and I would point out that Congressman Joe Courtney is a Democrat, Congressman Bill Johnson is a Republican, meaning this is an across the aisle bipartisan piece of legislation. And just 4 days ago, we got yet another sponsor. I think we're up to about 6 right now. And this is, agony of dealing with a Congress which is tied up in a whole lot of other things. And in fact, as I speak to you tonight, they're worrying about whether the government is going to come to a complete grinding halt over the weekend. The nature of the bill, which N5AUS and I drafted, and these are the words, is that a private land use restriction, that means deed restrictions, HOA rules, that prohibits an amateur from installing an antenna may not be adopted or enforced. Well, that's not as broad as it sounds. You'll see why in a moment. What we decided to do was to say that they couldn't enforce it, such a rule, against 4 specific types of antennas. A flagpole, this flagpole you're staring at right there belongs to AA9BZ at his condo in Virginia. And it's a real flagpole, but it has dual use. All those metal pieces are bonded together so that it's a vertical. So if you have a flagpole up, you ought to be able to use it for amateur radio as well. You have a right under the Right to Display the American Flag Act to erect a flagpole. So we figured if you have a right to erect a flagpole, you ought to be able to just use it in addition as an amateur radio antenna, because aesthetically, there would be no argument that would be valid in our view against a flagpole in a condo association. This particular condo association, as you can tell from the background, is sort of townhouse side by side, but there are also a lot of individual single-family homes on quarter-acre lots. I forget the manufacturer of this, but you can buy flagpole antennas. The second thing is, you may or may not be aware of something called the FCC's OTARD rule, OTARD, over-the-air reception devices. And there's a little bit of history to this. The 96 Act, the Telecommunications Act of 96, which is different from but attached to the Communications Act of 34 when you go looking it up in federal law, allowed for satellite TV reception, which accompanied the world of cable TV about that time. And what happened was you were allowed to put up a 1 meter dish, except in Alaska where it can be bigger, despite condo rules. They were being preempted. In other words, there's nothing sacred about condo rules and regulations or CCNRs, common covenants and restraints of record. When those CCNRs violate public policy, if you go back into the 30s, you could recall perhaps that there used to be CCNRs that would prevent you from selling your home to maybe a Catholic, maybe somebody Jewish, maybe somebody Black, maybe somebody Hispanic. And all of those have been preempted by federal law. This is just yet another preemption. Well, along with the preemption for satellite dishes, the Association for Maximum Service Television, AMST, went to the Congress and said, hey, you're going to let satellite dishes preempt, but what about free television that requires a television broadcast service, VHF or UHF antenna? And the Congress agreed to preempt TVBS, television broadcast service, VHF and UHF antennas, making it illegal to prevent the construction of a TV antenna when it's banned by a common covenant and or restraint. So this happens to be in North Carolina. It's a TV antenna on a tower, perfectly legal under the OTARD rule. And when I was drafting, I said to myself, if this is legal for TV, and it covers, if you'll look closely at the bent element on the far left-hand side of the boom, channel 2, that's 56 megahertz. And it goes all the way up to about 860, 880, something like that. If you can put up a log periodic to watch TV, why couldn't you use a physically, aesthetically identical antenna for VHF and UHF? So the way we drafted it, a television broadcast service antenna on a tower, which would be legal under the OTARD rule, something that looks like it ought to be legal for amateur radio. Because the aesthetic argument fails, you're already going to have these kinds of antennas. Here's the 1 meter diameter dish. Now, the photograph you're looking at right now is actually a direct TV dish where the gear at the focal point has actually been converted for moon bounce. This is actually, in real life, an amateur radio antenna and indistinguishable from what would otherwise be an OTARD satellite TV receive antenna. The only thing I did was I changed it from 1 meter in diameter to 1 meter in diameter or diagonal measurement antenna. So an OTARD antenna would be legal, a vertical, and also a vertical up to, a flagpole, as well as a vertical up to 43 feet in height would be legal. That's 3 kinds of antennas: dish, flagpole, vertical. And that's where we go with this kind of regulation, statute. I've mentioned previously the sponsors. And I'm just I was gonna close it all up, but let's just stop right there and invite questions. And as we get into the question period, because I didn't want to make this too long, I've been running about we're at about 24 minutes right now. What I want to do is tell you that since I do not sit on the board, I'm perfectly willing to answer questions about my opinions about what's happening at the board level of the ARRL today, but I'm particularly interested in answering antenna zoning, CC&R type questions. So I turn it back. Do I go back to you, Bud, because you're the host, or who's actually the host?
Rob?
Unmute.
Right, I'm actually the host. This is Rob, WA3IHV, but I'm going to pass the microphone around here and people can ask their questions. So please identify yourself.
Yep, my name is Tim, Whiskey Quebec 1 Juliet. Thank you so much for your presentation today. It's very helpful. And my question is, what's the likelihood of this passing once they reconvene and our government is back up and running?
An excellent question. I'm reminded of the story of the fellow who runs into a bottle on the shores of California. He rubs it and out pops the genie. The genie says, 3 wishes nonsense. We're not going to abide by that. You get only one. Guy says, okay, I've always wanted to go to Hawaii, but I'm afraid to fly. So I'd like you to build me a highway to Hawaii. Genie says, boy, that's really tough. You know how deep the ocean is, how long the distance is? Guy says, okay, no road to Hawaii. Explain women to me. The genie says, 2 lanes or 4. Now, you've asked me to predict Congress. Does anyone see the parallel? The answer is sometimes it takes a long time. Each session of Congress, as you may know, because you reelect representatives every 2 years, is only 2 years long. I would love to get it through this time around, but I think more realistically, it takes a while to develop the steam, line up your sponsors, get committee hearing time. And then, of course, even though you're doing all the right things, you have to defeat the efforts of the CAI, that's the Community Associations Institute, which takes on something of a sacred duty to prevent amateur radio from occurring, except in a clubhouse on community association property. Now, there have been some breakthroughs. There are antennas allowed in the villages, and there are antennas allowed in one of the Sun Cities in Nevada. And I have personally drafted a model piece of legislation to be the rules and regulations that would regulate amateur radio antennas in a condo if the condo had an interest in creating such a thing. And if you want a copy of it, I'd be happy to send it to you. And if you really want to stay up late tonight, I'd be happy to show it to you and go through it. But that's getting into the weeds, which as a lawyer, I love to do. You know, nothing that we lawyers like more than definitions and start dates. But to address the actual question, if somebody wants a copy of that model set of rules and regulations for a condo association, just email me, hopengarten@post.harvard.edu or k1vr@arrl.org, k1vr@arrl.net, fred@antennazoning.com. Pick an address. I'm not hard to find. There's only one K1VR. So what I'm saying is hard to predict. But if you find a condo association that's willing to begin the discussions with you, I've got a model that you can open discussions with. Next question.
Yep.
If I've adequately answered that one.
Same person here. Follow-up question, if I may.
Sure.
So the main opposition to this is that CAI or CAR?
It's the Communities Associations Institute, CAI.
Gotcha. And is there anyone else in opposition to it?
They're the people who stand up and wave both arms every time. We know of no other opposition, and to help us, we are seeking out letters of support from state and regional organizations with which we work, such as the Military Affiliate Radio System, the American Red Cross, RACES, Amateur Radio Emergency Service, emergency services of all kind. I'd love to get a letter from APCO or police associations. And if any one of you can help us generate a letter on letterhead, the letterhead's more important than the actual text, but we'll be happy to draft the text for you. If anyone can help, please tell me. I will most welcome your help.
I have a question. NA6MB Mike here.
I might
Actually kind of this kind of thing comes around every session and never makes it through. So we hopefully you'll have some more luck with this than previous attempts. But my question is actually, we have in our state constitution, I believe, or at least
Can you hold your question? Don't
Sure.
forget it for just 1 second while I respond to your preamble. The last time around, the ARL legislation received a voice vote. If you know anything about Congress, the only way you can get a voice vote is if the party leaders agree that there's no opposition that would kill it. In the House, it passed unanimously in the House, and it was killed in the Senate for 2 reasons. One reason is that Senator Nelson of Florida, who I would describe as having been in the thrall of the condo associations of Florida. There are a lot of condos in Florida. So that was very political. Was then the senior non-majority party senator, the senior ranking member, the ranking member of the relevant committee on the communications committee of the subcommittee on communications of the Commerce Committee. And he killed it. He had, as the ranking member, the effective ability to kill it. Secondly, we withdrew it because maybe some people here are familiar with the fact that I wrote an article that got a lot of circulation on why we were better off without it than with it. And N3JT, a former FCC attorney, wrote an article in CQ magazine on why we would be better off without it than with it. I'll give you the quickest of explanations. And that is, the way that bill was written, it was written in conjunction with CAI, and it was written so that if you erected an antenna without that statute, you'd be violating a regulation of your condo association. But if that bill had passed and you erected an antenna in violation of your condo association regulations, you would be violating a federal law and subject to fines and the like. So when I pointed this out, the board of directors of the ARRL actually withdrew support from their own bill. So that's why prior efforts died. This one will not have support withdrawn by the board. in my opinion. It's a lot better written. And the kinds of antennas that we're protecting ought to be non-objectionable because they're already allowed by the OTARD rule or the Right to Display the American Flag Act. Now, that response to your preamble, I hope you've remembered your question. Please go ahead with it.
Yeah, thanks. The question's not really, well, I don't know, maybe it's sideways related, but we have a, it's either state law or California Constitution. I'm pretty sure it's state law about PRB1 being a law.
Yes.
Municipality government to prohibit outright antennas. They have to have an accommodation. How did HOAs become mini governments without being treated like governments?
Wow. Great question. And in fact, that kind of issue was fought out in Foster City, California, about 15 years ago, where every home in Foster City is also in a condo association. So the argument made by the ham radio lawyers was that their condo association regulation against antennas was in effect a municipal regulation against antennas forbidden by PRB1. PRB1 only regulates governmental rules, not condo rules. And your question is, how'd condos get to be so powerful? The answer is because people elected to buy homes with those rules. We have long had common covenants and restraints. As I said, they originated for the most foul of reasons, and that is to prevent land from being sold to what would have been in the minds of those promoting those CC&Rs unwelcome neighbors. That's where it originated in the US in large part. There have always been other CC&Rs, but the ugly ones came along that way. These rules exist because people are willing to go along with them. And it turns out that people are less and less willing to go along with them. I had a look at the exceptions in the state of New Hampshire to the power of a homeowner association. And there are 78 exceptions. Since this is a particularly interesting question, I'm going to bring up a completely different slide just to show you some things that have been prohibited by certain condo associations in the United States. This is just a collection of some things. We have seen condos try to prohibit the display of the American flag or the erection of flagpoles to display the American flag. The installation of solar panels, energy efficient roofing shingles, because they didn't match the color.
You're not
code.
sharing that slide. We're not seeing it.
Oh, then how do I do this? I stopped sharing one slide, share screen, and share that slide. Glad you responded. Are you now seeing it?
Yes.
Good. Energy efficient roofing shingles because they didn't match the color code. Rainwater collection systems have been prohibited by CC&Rs. composting, xeriscaping. That's if you live in a place where there's not a lot of rain, and you landscape without plants requiring water. Certain kinds of turf, like astroturf kind of thing. There was, in fact, a Texas condo association that forbade you to park a Ford F-150 truck in your driveway. It could only be stored in the garage. There have been rules against clotheslines, or what's known today as solar drying. The display of political signs, the installation of the standby electric generators, satellite TV dishes until the 96 Act, and the OTARD rule. Oh, I forgot to mention, the OTARD rule has subsequently been expanded to allow wireless internet, mast towers and antennas, and those tend to be more flat panel than dishes. And that's why I wrote 1 foot in diameter or diagonal measurement, because the WISP antennas being flat, you don't, and rectangular, you don't measure them in diagonal distance. You'd go crazy trying to figure out the diagonal measurement of a flat panel rectangle. As well as I was mentioning earlier, the TV broadcast service antennas, masts, and towers. So these kinds of CC&R prohibitions have been preempted in various states. And all we're seeking to do here is add letter O, certain amateur radio antennas that were previously prohibited and will now, and the prohibition will be eliminated by this law if we manage to get it through the Congress. Have I answered your question? Well, that microphone is off, so let's go on to the next question.
Fred, this is Bob K9RHY. And I would like to first thank you very much for your assistance in my dealings with the city of Poway when I was living in Poway, California. I've since moved.
My pleasure.
I've since moved, and I'm not in California anymore. Part of the reason for my move had to do with neighbors. I had some fantastic neighbors, some of whom are in the room today, but some of whom were not at all supportive of my ham radio efforts. My question is, I'm going to first make a comment because I live in a condominium controlled association right now, and my neighbor just across the walk from me has a flagpole, and I look forward to following your efforts on making flagpoles into antennas, because I think that would be a terrific option for me. Right now I'm using other means, but I would like to do that. I have a question though, and it has to do with the FCC. There's a new commissioner who was just sworn in. I think her name is Anna Gomez. And I was just wondering, with the balance of the political alignment of the FCC now firmly in one direction, whether you expect that her appointment will have an effect on some of the regulation that you're dealing with. And I think of the C-band, which is part of the 5G effort, as well as just kissing cousin of our ham band in that region. And my question is, how do you think that may affect some of your ongoing efforts?
Well, I'm going to give you a couple of answers to that. First is we have no clue at the moment. Second of all, the ideological split between Republicans and Democrats doesn't seem to pop up with respect to this kind of issue. However, it would naturally appear to me, and I could easily be wrong here, that people on the more conservative side of the political spectrum ought to favor less restricted or more comprehensive landowner rights. You know, in 1900, you could write a law review article and say that you own your land in fee simple absolute, and that means from the center of the earth to the clear blue sky. Well, not so much anymore, because forgetting the issue of whether you may have sold off mineral rights, ever since about 1954, aesthetics have become a proper form of regulation of land. Before that, it was really just public safety, but the Supreme Court changed all that. Bottom line, I don't know how to predict how the FCC is going to go on this, but with respect to the land use regulation, in some respects, I don't care how the FCC goes. They have previously been very plain as a commission that they don't feel they have the power to preempt CC&Rs. And the reason they were able to preempt municipal regulation in 1985 with PRB1 had to do with the fact that that was authorized by it was authorized by statute. Having said that, they're very plain that they will not create a PRB1 equivalent for CC&Rs on their own, but they have also been equally plain that if the Congress tells them to do it, they'll do it. In other words, the FCC is really not a player. It's going to be entirely rational. Have I answered your question?
Absolutely. Thank you for that very much. And again, I want to thank you for your help, as well as the help of W9WU, Jim O'Connell, who is now a silent key. He helped me in my battle with the city of Poway. So again, thanks very much for that, Fred.
I miss Jim to this day. He used to run the ham radio and the law panel at the Dayton Hamvention, and he turned it over to me. I've been running it for the last 15 years. And so I used to run it with him, and I miss him.
Me too.
Next question.
Hi, Fred. This is Gail, K6GO, and I'm the one who is Bob's neighbor. And you spoke to me and were helpful, but we were the early Poway fight, not the later Poway fight. My question is, which we won, yes. And my question is, in your opinion, how important is it when we lobby as good lobbyists for the legislation we want, that we are absolutely political without being partisan?
Gail, terrific question, because you're picking up on the slide where I pointed out that this is a bipartisan introduction of legislation. And in fact, there is something that I should have mentioned, and I'm so glad you brought this up. We are now in the point of life where we're collecting co-sponsors. We have an actual bill, HR 4006, and we would love to get Senate sponsors. We would love to get more House sponsors. So if you are inclined, this is a great time to write or contact in any way your representatives to say, would you please co-sponsor HR 4006? And the answer, the more direct answer to your question is, Congress loves bipartisan legislation because it gives representatives who are not wildly radical, left or right, the opportunity to take a photograph with a co-sponsor from another party and publicize what good congressional citizens they are. And we want to have them have such opportunities often. Is that a useful answer, Gail?
Very much. Yeah, we've got the press release for the website, so I believe this group will follow up and follow through and contact. Our rep is Scott Peters, and we will do what we can to help.
That's totally great news. People who have been making contact are getting two kinds of responses, generally speaking. The one response is, why should I care about this? Then we have to tell them about the value of amateur radio in emergency communications or the like, and the value of amateur radio in what's sometimes called workforce development, which is that we get people interested in STEM fields. And as the twig is bent, the tree is so inclined. We need radio hams because they create things like repeater systems and radar and cellular telephone and all kinds of things electronics, in electronics. So those are all the usual arguments that you would create yourself turn out to be effective. And the second thing that they actually like to hear is, oh, so this is an opportunity for me to join with people from across the aisle. And then they can use it in campaigning by saying, if they're in a district which is not, 80% Republican or 80% Democrat, if it's a close election, they like to be able to pick up votes from independents by claiming that they're acting in the best interest of the constituency and not just solely in the best interests of the political party to which they belong.
Fred, I had one quick question. When the municipality tells us that a 30-foot tower is sufficient and a dipole is sufficient rather than a gain antenna, how do we counter that? Do we come up with HFTA data or say that this is a hobby and we want to be able to communicate, or even the OTAR putting up a larger Yagi or a log periodic to receive signals from LA? How do we counter when they say all you need is a very simple antenna to communicate?
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of answers to that because it's a complex question. But let me see if I can just throw out a few. The first is, if they're trying to limit you to a firm, fixed maximum height, that should be a winnable case in most places, although there's one really bad California decision on the topic. But there are, I think, 5 federal circuit courts of appeal that have ruled that a firm fixed maximum height is illegal because by the virtue of being firm and fixed, it cannot possibly be an accommodation to the radio amateur. Second, if they want to argue about whether it's effective, there are court cases, I'll be happy to provide them to you, which say that if essentially it is the communications that he or she desires. I'm quoting from the original PRB one, the communications he or she desires. That's the test. In other words, this is a subjective test. It is the communications of the applicant, amateur radio operator, that count, and not whether some rogue radio ham shows up and says, I've been working 10 meters all my life with a dipole at 18 feet, and it works just fine. That is not the communications that the applicant desires. So for effective communications, I frequently show up with a document created by Dennis Egan, W1UE. I told him how to create these things, and now he does all the work for me, which begins with targets that you want to talk to. And then you use the terrain data. You then throw that into terrain data is HFTA, high frequency terrain analysis. And then you throw that outcome into VOA CAP, the Voice of America Communications Analysis Program, I think it is, which was originally created by the US Navy. And the advantage to using VOA CAP as the ultimate decision on whether a particular antenna will be adequate for the frequencies and communications you desire is that obviously it was not software written by radio hams to favor radio hams. It's the Voice of America and the US Navy who did the work, was paid for by taxpayers. It is not prejudiced software. And if anybody wants to see what one of these studies looks like, send me an email. I'll be happy to send you one of these studies, and you can either commission W1UE to do it. He's very good at it and cheap. I think he only charges $400 and for fixed price. Or you can just figure out how he does it, and he'll be happy to tell you how he does it, and you can do your own. But again, you start with the communications you desire, and then we do not prejudice the actual numbers. We do it at a sunspot number of 100, which is the average over 11 years. It's, you know, that's the way it was designed. And we do not exclude, in other words, we do it only when the band could possibly be open. If it's 10 meters, it's only daytime communications. You know, we're not decreasing the availability of communications because it's the middle of the night. So it's really fair software, and it's really these reports are I would say bulletproof. I've used them about 20 times, and no one's ever questioned the technical aspects of these reports on why you need something more than a dipole at 30 feet or a dipole at any height or any antenna at 30 feet. You know, you can actually feed in the gain of the antenna and the height of the antenna along with your local terrain data and justify the kind of height you want. Now, it's a little harder to justify if you're proposing a 299-foot antenna, but that's another discussion.
All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
Fred, thanks very much. That was very interesting.
If anyone wants the information on why a firm fixed maximum height is illegal, I'll be happy to provide I'll write up in case citations to it. But that kind of thing is already in my book, Antenna Zoning for the Radio Amateur, published in cooperation with the ARRL, $49.95 from the ARRL or HRO. Um,
Flood.
and, please don't make me try to ship it. I'm not a shipping department. I'm a practicing lawyer.
Okay.
I have a question, Rob.
Great. Well, thanks very much. It's
By the
late
way,
there.
the book is now in its 3rd edition and 4th printing, so there are some people who are reading it.
Oh, did someone else have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. N6XT. Or, yeah, I'll get it together here yet. For Fred. I'm dealing with the city of Cottonwood right now, and I thought I had it prepared. I had 50 pages. In fact, how do you say it? I had it help, but I redid the one you did for N7, CW. And he sent it to me and I massaged it and I redid it and I did all this. That's not good enough. They want it put in their words, and I will talk to you offline about that. In other words, they want to know the height. They want me to show an example where the tower is going to be, what's going to be behind it. They want to do me to do a Photoshop. I didn't have this problem when I put 2 towers up when I lived in California. But here in Cottonwood, they're a little different. They're kind of not hard-headed, but thick-headed. And I don't talk to them that way. I think about them that way. So I'll probably contact you offline at a later date. I just want to throw, it's kind of strange when you prepare something and then you submit it and they said, no, we don't want it that way. And that's just the way they are. Back to you.
The answer to that happens to be why. Well, the question is, why are they like that? And the answer is because they can be like that.
Bureaucracy.
The people who take jobs as city planners are not going to be the next Elon Musk. They're not inventive folks, in my humble opinion, but you can get along with them because some of the things they're asking for are actually somewhat understandable. They want to know the height. They want to know where on the lot it's going to be. I've never been in front of a board that did not want to know where on the lot it would be. And in fact, they always want to know the make and model of the manufacturer because they want to know that it's not going to be rickety and fall down. And they have a right to know that it's not going to be rickety and fall down. So you may find that you're going to be submitting a lot of manufacturer's specifications. I would tell you, go ahead.
Yeah, which I've done. And I've even showed them where I'm going to put the tower, but they said the drawing wasn't professional enough.
Yeah, so here's the problem. The Uniform Building Code, which is the law in 47 states, 43 states, something like that, gives them leeway to be nasty. And the reason it does is it says that the building officials can require information necessary to make their decision. And frankly, they get to define what the information necessary for the decision is. So trying to fight them by saying you're asking for too much information or information that's too specific or the like is a losing battle. That's just one where you have to suck it up and provide them with the information they ask you for.
Well, I've answered 5 out of their 10 requests. I'm working on the other 5. I just had neck surgery, so I'm kind of slowed down a little bit. But I plan on resubmitting. I'll probably contact you if they reject what I submit. I was going to put it, they wanted me to limit to 60 feet. Now I said I'll go to 89 feet or 90 feet. Because then they wanted to show me where the blocks were on the tower. And I'm going, what? So I went back to the 80.
What do you mean by blocks?
In other words, where it's going to restrict it from going any higher than 60 feet on the tower. It's a crank up. So it's a crank up tower is a TS-489, a TX-489. Long story short, I thought I had it all prepped and it was all going to go through, and then they threw me a curve back right before I had the surgery. And I said, well, I'm gonna just settle on that, and then I go back and attack it, and not attack it, answer their questions. And then one thing, which is I thought was ridiculous, I know they want to see the tower. I got everything for the base, but US Tower didn't forward me the tower itself, standing up. I have a picture of it, but it's real small, so I have to blow that up. And I've also got rested, so I've answered, like I said, half their questions. I just got to go forward. Thank you for your time, Fred.
I just want to make one argument here. Sometimes you'll run in a city situation, run into a situation where the municipal officials are in effect inventing something they call a fall zone. And they claim that they need this fall zone for reasons of safety. Now, there are a couple of things that are wrong with that concept, inherently wrong, and it's not always obvious to people who aren't in my world. One of them is a municipality cannot make up its own building code. There's a state building code. If you meet the state building code, it's safe. Now, this unfortunately lays you open to, well, if you're saying it's going to meet the state building code, I want to have a PE stamp on it that says it meets the state building code. You can't fight that. You're going to have to get a PE if they insist on you getting a PE. But the second thing is, this fall zone thing is inherently ridiculous because, for example, here in Boston, we have a 52-story Prudential Center. If you, just for the purposes of keeping the math simple, assume that each story is 10 feet tall, you'd have to have a radius of 520 feet from any part of the building for a fall zone for the Prudential Center. Well, we don't require a fall zone for tall buildings. Why? Because we understand that professional engineers can stamp the building and say it ain't gonna fall 510 feet from its base. And the same thing ought to be true of towers. They can't make up their own building code, and if they're claiming that they need it for some sort of safety reason, that can be met with a PE stamp. Finally, the interesting thing about these so-called fall zones is in effect, it creates a 1-to-1 setback, which on small lots would have the effect of creating a firm fixed maximum height. And those I've already told you are illegal, and I'll be happy to provide you with the citations. And lastly, I would say that towers are not designed to fail within a certain radius. They're designed to stay up.
Yeah. Right.
So if someone says, I want it to fall within a certain radius, they're saying, you're asking me to design a tower to fail.
Yep.
That makes no sense.
Well,
So people invent these requirements without thinking through the physics of it all. You know, towers do not fall the length of their height without sabotage. They don't fall like a pencil. They fold up on themselves.
Yep. Also, after I get it passed, then I have to go in front of the city council. Why? I don't ask the question. I go with the flow on that one. Because once the planning commission has to go to
does your city's bylaw require a special permit?
Conditional use permit.
Conditional use permit above a certain height?
Yes.
Okay,
Above
well,
60
there's no way
feet.
there's no way to avoid them going in front of the city council. I've been in front of many of them. My most favorite was for K1ZM on Cape Cod. I walked into a room with him and me and a local lawyer, the three of us, and we were opposed by the rest of the 65 people in the room. I just got to tell you the end of the story. We were applying for 85 feet, and we pointed out that we needed the 85 feet because the antennas were going to rotate, and if they really wanted to bring it down to 75, my client was perfectly willing to cut the necessary radius of trees and rid his forested backyard of about 25 trees. They really didn't like that thought. And I'll shorten the story by saying that at 12 minutes past midnight, we settled on 81 feet because that was because the problem is that trees just want to grow, but on Cape Cod, they don't really grow above 78 or so feet. So that allowed for a little droop of the elements, and he got his permit, and he's a very effective contester today with 2 towers in his backyard.
Thank you, Fred. Like I say, I'll probably contact you later.
We've had some good luck in Arizona, but particularly within Phoenix, within the, not in the county, but in the city proper.
Right.
So planning board there is just obstinate, and they feel no obligation to obey law. And my client there didn't have the money, frankly, to litigate. So, sometimes you got to move if you want to put up the antenna of your retirement dreams.
Well, I have 1.8 acres. I have plenty of land, and I have plenty of fall zone. All that's already submitted to them.
Good enough, Ron. I wish you well.
Yeah, like I said, I'll probably contact you if they help me again. So thank you.
Great. Again, well, thanks very much, Fred. And thanks for stepping in for John also. We wish him luck on his case that he has upcoming or is pending. So
Well, thank you. I'll convey that thanks to him. And I'm sorry he wasn't here to join us because he's a more interesting speaker than I am. In any event, wish all of you well. And I got to tell you, you guys do live in one of the most difficult places to live in the United States. California law is just awful with respect to ham radio.
yeah.
There's a story to it, but I'll not extend the meeting right now to tell you, except to say one little thing. The lawyer in the worst case that we're talking about got his fees paid for by the municipality, but the ham did not get the tower. I thought it was handled wrong. Been a pleasure to be with you tonight. Thanks for hearing me out.
Great. Well, 73, have a good evening. It's late back there. We're going to have a quick round table and wrap it up.
Wish you well, but before you go, tell me what room you're in. I see the bunch of you are gathered in one place.
We're in a restaurant.
We're in a restaurant in
San Diego.
San Diego in Claremont Mesa area off of the freeway. It's
Okay.
called Elijah's. It's a deli type restaurant. And they
San
have a
Diego.
room for
San Diego is not a good place to be a radio ham who has visions of antennas.
It depends on where you live. In my neighborhood, we don't have any CCNRs.
Cool. Good night, everybody. Thanks for living with
Good
us.
night. Thanks again, Fred. Good luck.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Fred.
We'll do a quick roundtable here. I'll start off. We're looking at getting shirts, and if anybody has a high definition picture of what the logo for the shirts, the multicolor logo is, if you could email it to me, or if anybody has it, that would be great.
I've got the artwork that I sent to the last place, Rob.
Oh, great. Okay.
And I think my wife has even has embroidery files
Oh, great. That would be perfect.
that were. Yeah,
I'll be in
so
touch with you because
yeah, we can.
we're looking at having a company put a store online so that if anybody wants to order a shirt, they can just order them directly and
That'd be great.
they'll be passed along rather than bringing them to the meeting and whatnot. So with that, you're up,
Yeah.
Jim.
Hi, Jim, K6ZH. We just got back from a amazing trip to Croatia and Slovenia. Many of you 9A and S5 from ham radio standpoint, no ham radio experience with that, but way better than anything we expected in that trip. It was just a wonderful place to visit. Ham radio wise, today, so right now there's 4D expeditions on that everybody should probably pay attention to. There's a ZL7 on from Chatham Island, T2 from Tuvalu, worked him on yesterday, and we need to get that one for Joan. There's a VK9 on now out from Norfolk Island, and the really big one, it's supposed to start up a couple of days, is ZD9 from Tristan de Acuna. This one is just not on much, so pay attention, because this is like a once every 10-year one, if you want to work it. And also I worked 5B4 AXW, I think, this morning on 10 CW, and that's Cyprus is not that common, number one, and number two, being able to work the Europeans on 10 is just great. So I will be part of a team going to Imperial County for CQP, but this is the old gang together, N7CW and me and Nerdy Dan N6ERD and N60EG. We're going to go back up to Desert View Tower. Dennis N6KI is arranged to refurb our tower trailer that Harvey K6QK, for those who've been around a long time, remember. And so we're going to go back up with a newly renovated trailer and put Desert View Tower back on the air for CQP. And last thing to mention is that there's a annular eclipse, solar eclipse on October 14th. And the band of visibility kind of goes from Idaho through eastern Nevada, southwestern Utah, all of New Mexico, and western Texas. An annular is when the moon's disk isn't quite big enough to cover the sun's disk, so it leaves an annulus. But anyway, it's cool. So if you know anybody who lives in Albuquerque, go see him on October 14th. And then we're going to go to the total solar eclipse next April, and we're going to go to Texas. If you've not seen a total solar eclipse, I would highly recommend that if you know anybody that lives from Texas to Maine, go see it.
Where are you going in Texas?
Dallas. It's going to be center line right over Dallas. Let's see, the center lines at San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Tulsa, Little Rock.
San Antonio is a little bit outside. It's not on. I don't think San Antonio is on the center line, because I know Uvalde is, and that's where we're going.
Okay, very good. And all the way, I mean, Cleveland's going to be on center line. Pittsburgh's going to be on center line. It's going to be amazing.
N6K I am. Whatever he said.
K6GO, and not too much new, but I love Bob's graphs in the newsletter about how FT8 is just taken over. And I guess my confirmation from Kazakhstan is pretty exciting. And looking forward to the stations you mentioned. And I think you guys know I'm programmed for Visalia, and I think we've got Swains Island to do a presentation. Yes.
Mike, NA6MB. A lot of FT8. Been getting more and more familiar with the K4 KPA 1500 combination. It's a beautiful setup. They talk to each other. You flip the amp out of standby into operated. It reduces the power from the radio and sets it to whatever you set it to not overload the drive input. It's great. So I'm loving that. And I had some surgery on my hand, so I haven't been able to do something. But one interesting thing that I found out was that the K4, well, it runs on 12 volts, which is pretty normal, but my other radio was plugged in. This one wasn't. So what that happened was that the connector between the battery / power supply switch to the main bus of the ham station. So had to repair that real quick before I had the answer. Just got it done the day before. And so recovering from that, and everything seems to be well.
Okay, Randy, you're up.
This is Randy KQ6RS. Haven't been in the air much. I got a buddy of mine just took a vacation in Washington State, which isn't really DX, but propagation was amazing. I turned my 7300 down to as low power as it could go, which I've measured as like 0.7 watts. And we had like a solid QSO, and all he had in Washington was a dipole he attached to a tree. And so from San Diego to Washington on under 1 watt sideband with a solid copy is pretty amazing. Kind of not directly DX related, also 20 meters. Playing around with get another buoy I'm going to launch with. It's running 20 meters Whisper. This is like an industrial one. It could potentially last years. I got Noah's going to launch it early November. Previous ones I've launched had 6 months worth of battery. This will have solar power, potentially could last for years, and hope once it's launched, no one tells me to turn it off because I won't be able to, but it will be fascinating watching where it goes.
Danny, WB6FWS, no report.
Brian, KN6MJK, just doing a little FT8 and a little bit of sideband. 10 meters, been kind of fun last couple of days. Last night was kind of dead for everything. I don't know what happened, but for me, no, last night. Yesterday I was on, but everything else that night was, 40. Okay, yeah. Was from a little later than that, I couldn't get about, but 10 meters been a little hot during the day. So, all right.
Yeah, and 6 BTF, I really don't have anything to report this month.
And Jerry, W6KIN, nothing to report. If anybody's looking for some K4s, there's 3 of them for sale from the USS Midway, but they're not, yeah, K4s. So, but they're going to be available from the USS Midway. Yeah. They're, oh, I'm sorry, K3. K3. Yeah. Sorry. Never mind.
Apple Music.
And 6JJ, Tom here. Been working some FT8, but I got a surprise yesterday. I went out to the mailbox and there's a card from Brandon Island. It was something in St. Brandon. And I worked them in 2018. I just got the card through their manager yesterday. Yeah. It must be mail, snail mail.
Steve, K6RSH, I've been doing a FT8 and I passed 2,000. I'm trying to catch up to our illustrious Brian with his 6,000 so far. I have been working the gray line real successfully, and I keep telling people I got a POS antenna. It's a B&W, 80, but the way my antenna is situated, it points right into Europe. So when Europe's open, I've got it. I'm not having very much luck with the Indian Ocean at all. So I did hit part of India this morning, but it was like 5 minutes or less. Boom, it was gone. Yep.
Thanks, Steve. Tim Cassidy, WQ1J. And I'm just having fun. I just got an end-fed antenna up and playing with antennas. You guys all remember when you did that, I'm sure. I was glad to hear that somebody melted something. I'm glad to hear someone else. I won't say anything, Steve. One time got an RF burn. And so I won't feel so bad when those things happen to me.
Okay, we'll go to the online people. Ed, you're up. AI 6.0.
Hey, good evening to everybody. Everything is fine out here. We're finally gotten some cool weather and some rain here after a really hot and dry summer. And don't have a whole lot of news here. I just worked, for instance, Kyrgyzstan here on 18.079. I think he's still on there, really big signal. But don't have any new countries, and just doing a lot of contesting on the weekends. And I did catch Mike there. Well, I've forgotten your call on the FT8 the other day. It's maybe 2 weeks ago. MB and
NA6MB.
NA6MB. Yeah, I got you in the log. I don't know if you remember that, about 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. But anyway, it's good to hear you, and nice to be a part of the group here tonight, and appreciate the presentation that was given. And I'll say 73 to everybody.
Great. Stay well. Ron, you're up. N6XT.
Thank you, Rob. As some of you know, I've had neck surgery, so it's kind of slowed me down a little bit. I'm limited, can't lift anything overhead, limited to 10 pounds for the next couple months. Well, more than a couple months, 9 weeks. And go back to see the doctor October 3rd for follow-up. It seems to be working out well. Couldn't swallow, I couldn't eat or anything. I dropped 8 pounds just like that, because I couldn't swallow very well. Now I can swallow food the past 2 weeks, so I'm good there. Work with FT8 Lithuania. I'm still waiting for a confirmation. That was a new one for me on 10. I haven't totaled them up yet. I've got to submit the club log. I was on there at one time or on the club, so I'll resubmit that probably through LOTW. And then I'm going to check on the LOTW. I think I've got work all states on 5 bands, 10 through 80. So we'll see. And let's see what else is going on. I'm working on the tower thing, and that's fun. I've been working on that for months. And everything, I thought I had everything ready, and then they threw it back and said, no, you need to correct this, this, and this, like I try to explain it, Fred. So back to you, Rob.
Great. Well, good luck with your tower exploits. Lou, you're up. KW6Q.
Hi, guys. Not much here. I just wanted to agree with Jim and others. 10 has been unbelievable in the last couple of days. And I have what amounts to a flagpole antenna, about 20 meters in length, with a tuner at the base, and it's working just fine. That's really all I have.
Bob, K9RHY, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And it was great to have Fred do his presentation today. And I want to once again thanks to those fantastic neighbors that I had when I was in Poway, who were behind me in my antenna quest. No real DX activity, couple of islands. Doing that article on FT8 opened my eyes a bit. As a CW particularly fanatic, looking at what FT8 can do, at least theoretically, I think was an eye opener. I haven't converted over yet, but the door is now open. It wasn't open before, but I did open it a crack. So good to see everyone here. Good to hear everyone. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Take care, Bob. Bud, you're up. AE6BH.
Okay, nothing really to report, because I haven't turned the radio on in a while, but from hearing all these reports about 10, I got to do that. So maybe I'll try and get on the air here in the next few days, and I guess play with the contest. I did get a confirmation a day or two from Agaliga in St. Brandon Islands on 3 bands that I guess was back in March. So I was pretty happy to see those come in. And despite not turning the radio on, I did manage to get something a couple months ago. So that's all I got.
Great. Well, 73. Bob, KA7IGN, you're up.
Okay, well, let's see. I finally turned the radio on after a while, and that Tango 22 Tango was up on 17, and I actually, I guess my FT8 worked because I got him last night about 7 o'clock our time, and it gave me like a +16, and I think I gave him a +8. So that was a brand new one for me. That about covers it.
That's great. Norm, you're up.
Norman Berger, KC6CNO, a guest. And I've been playing with one of Palomar Engineers end-fed long wire antennas and having a heck of a time trying to get the SWR down on all the bands to something that I consider to be reasonable. Playing with counterpoises.
Well, good
That's
luck. 73, Ron, WA6 YCU or YCU?
Ron, WA6YOU.
Oh,
and
YOU.
and we're out here in Virginia, and yeah, it's getting late tonight. Anyway, Bob, I really enjoyed your article. It was fantastic, as I always enjoy your articles. I haven't been here in 2 months, been teaching, so now I'm taught my last class for 2023. I'm all finished. Doing a lot of FT8 and FT4. Worked the Tango 22 last night on 12 meters at 10:30 Virginia time, and he gave me a -22. I think that's probably the worst score I've ever had, but still got through. Worked the ZL7 and looking forward to the KH8 coming up. And Logbook of the World, I just passed 28,000 contacts on FT8 since 2017. So see you guys. Hope to see you all next month.
Great. Well, thanks for stopping by, and get some sleep this evening. I'm going to turn over the floor to Brian. We've got our raffle here. Yeah.
As you're doing that, did you say Norman's a Powesian?
Rancho
Norm?
Bernard, I live in Radio Free Rancho Bernardo.
Okay, I just want to make sure, do you know that the Powesians and Rancho Bernardoites, whatever you're called, get together every Saturday morning at 8 at the Hamburger Factory for breakfast?
I have heard that. Saturday mornings don't work out terribly well for me, unfortunately, but thank you for the invite.
Here, we'll turn it over to Brian.
Okay, you have to be present to win, and some people have left, so makes your chance is better, I guess. Okay, so the way this works for those of you who haven't been here for a while, we're going to pick one out of the group, and the first person gets to pick from the three items. Three items we have is a red wine. We have I believe it's a German ale, and then we have a fresh apple pie. So there's 2 alcoholics and 1 non-alcoholic. So the first person gets to pick what they want. Second person gets to pick what the remainder of what they want. And the third person just gets what they get. Okay, so that's the way it works. So we'll start here. Why don't you pick one for me? Just shut your eyes and reach in. The only trouble you have is if you pick your own, then they're going to all claim something. Okay, who you got?
I have, I can open it. Mike.
Oh, there, of course.
NA6MB.
All right, Mike got the wine. You were one of the luckiest people I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Well, I'm going to have Gail pick the next one. Oh, because Gail is the one I was thinking of when I started this. I was going to have her pick the first one. You weren't here. You were in Pablo or somewhere.
KQ6RS.
Whatever. What's left?
Got the bottle of wine, damn.
You like your
I'll have
All right, you pick the line. Danny, pick the third. And who have you got?
Steve, K6RSH.
All right. Take the laptop. All right, so there we are, our winners for today. All right. I put somebody's, where did I put it back? One of the, this. Who's here? All right.
So everybody get on CPP.
Hold on.
Everybody get on CQP the weekends, October 7, 8. It's the biggest QSO party in the country. And it starts at 9 a.m. local on Saturday to 3 p.m. local on Sunday. Multipliers, if you're in California, are states and Canadian provinces. Otherwise, it's California counties if you're outside the state. And there's a lot of people that can win bottles of wine. We've always done it as a group so that we're not eligible. But anyway, we will be K6QK from Imperial County. Work us.
Great. Well, thanks very much, everyone, for coming. Have a great evening. 73. We'll see you next month. And just a quick programming note. Someone stole our flag, so we didn't have the Pledge of Allegiance tonight.
Okay, I'd just like to tell Brian, next time you're on FT8, open up your text. There was a couple of countries calling you when you were calling CQ and you didn't go back to them.
Hey, Bob, turn your radio on. I'll talk to you on the way home.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
73, everybody. Have a good evening.